Yeah, I get right to the racks. Then I make that shit back. Run up on me, get shot in the back.
Is you to the building if you'll be at Scott Chapman? We're gonna be dad today. Pops. We have San Antonio Takeover, the bloody history of the Texas Mexican Mafia.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty interesting,
Texas,
right?
Texas Mexican Mafia.
Tongue twister, right?
Tongue twister.
Isn't that interesting? We try to cover Texas. I want to do more Texas-Mex stuff, like Tex-Mex. Yeah. But look, hi, Pops. How you doing with this outfit you got here?
Chilling like a villain on Thanksgiving, y'all.
You got a Brandon mascot looking like
America's Most Wanted right now. Chill.
You know, like Pops Mysterio, Dominicano
Pops
Mysterio.
Guys, let us know in the comments. Should I always wear this or not? Because he's saying to take it off.
No, yeah, he's going to have to take it off when we start.
I'm not going to reveal my face.
He's a joke. He doesn't take this shit off. He can't look throughout the whole video. We're not going to take him serious.
I'm not going to reveal my face, bro.
All right. It's JTV. Follow me on JTV Instagram. Follow me on Pops Instagram.
Yeah, follow me on Pops.
He's losing his mind, man. He's 67. Let's have it right to it, right?
Orale.
You know what we're talking.
On the night of May 4th, 2014, a San Antonio, Texas resident named Joey Maldonado decided to pay his friend, Julian Pacina, a visit.
Oh, shit.
Pacina was employed as a police officer for Balcones Heights, a small enclave inside San Antonio.
Oh, wow.
Julian Pacina was a patrol cop in the otherwise tiny police force.
He looked corrupt.
But he had a somewhat
Yeah, right. He looked
corrupt. He looked like he hang out with the homies on the weekend.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Julian Pacina was a patrol cop in the otherwise tiny police force, but he had a somewhat unusual side job for a peace officer in Texas. Pacina owned a small tattoo shop,
oh, wow.
Notorious Ink, and would spend many of his days off there, not just as the owner, but with a tattoo gun in hand, personally inking up clients. This day had been no different, and around 9:45 p.m., Pacina was ready to shutter the doors and call it a night. His friend noticed that something was off about him. Pacina mentioned having recently seen his daughter, which should have been good news, as he'd had ongoing problems with her mother after they had split.
Oh, man. Oh, wow.
But Pacina seemed abnormally agitated, preoccupied, and nervous, and frequently glanced at his phone as they conversed. Finally, Pacina told Maldonado not to wait up for him, and Maldonado headed off into the night, leaving Pacina to lock up the doors to Notorious Ink and go home.
Oh, shit.
Pacina sensed danger that night, but he couldn't have possibly known that over the past few days, members of a gang known as the Texas Mexican Mafia, or Mexiconomy, had literally dug a grave for him outside in the south central Texas wilderness.
Oh, that sucks.
In fact,
imagine someone having a grave dug for you. It's like some Breaking Bad shit.
I take it back. I assumed that he looked like a bad guy, but these guys are really out to get him, huh?
But who knows? Maybe he was doing business and the business went bad with the Mexican Mafia.
That shit crazy when they dig your ditch.
And you don't even know.
You don't even know.
Outside in the south central Texas wilderness. In fact, the only thing that had saved Pacina thus far was his paranoia.
Oh, wow.
But that was about to change. Despite Texas's track record as a state that's perfectly willing to execute cop killers, the Mexiconomy's leaders were so dead set on murdering this police officer that they had now decided it was worth the risk of a public assassination.
What?
At 10 p.m., Pacina received a text message as a white Pontiac Sunfire pulled up in front of his shop. He got up, walked outside, and conversed briefly with the driver, unaware that the two men donning dark blue hoodies and ski masks were approaching to his side, one armed with a pistol and the other with a shotgun. They ran up and opened fire, striking Pacina several times. As he fell, they dove into the back seat of the Sunfire and sped away, evading detection of law enforcement who poured onto the scene within 3 minutes of the shooting.
Oh, wow, they were gone.
As police taped off the...
Oh, wow. They poured in 3 minutes of the shooting. Police came quick, though.
Yeah, especially when they say officer down.
Yeah.
I seen police officers say officer down one time into a walkie-talkie. It must have been like 100 cops. And when they came, they was beating everybody that was standing there. They didn't ask no questions. When officer down?
Yeah. They're not playing with that.
They're not playing.
The crime scene, Pacina's killers were working to cover their tracks, hiding the vehicle, destroying the murder weapons, and laying low around San Antonio.
Oh my God.
The initial investigation turned up few clues. There were no eyewitnesses of any value, and Maldonado had no idea who Pacina was supposed to meet that night. But what no one knew not Pacina, not his killers, and not even the Balcones Heights homicide investigators who showed up to the scene that day, was that the FBI had captured the entire murder on video.
What?
Just a few days prior, an FBI agent disguised as an electrician had climbed a pole near Notorious Inc. and installed a hidden camera pointed directly at Pacina's shop.
That's not illegal to like.
So he
have...
was already under investigation by the FBI.
So he was corrupt. You're saying basically that's what
basically something was going on.
But that's not illegal, pops. To like have a random camera like watching somebody like that.
It's not illegal to be recorded in public. Many people misconstrue that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay. Julian Pacina was not merely a police officer who happened to own a tattoo parlor. He was a man of many secrets, and he lived a double life.
What?
Today's episode will focus on the Mexiconomy, the murder of Julian Pacina, and the web of killers, snitches, corruption, and gang infighting that he found himself caught in. It is a tale of betrayal that centers on a man who was living on both sides of the law, but who, as you will see, was far from the only one to harbor such secrets.
Yo, it's so funny because I'm thinking right now in my mind, I'm like, yo, how are you a cop and a gangbanger? But you gotta remember, being a cop is a job. It's a career. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? People forget that. Like, it's a career. It's not just...
I'll be honest with you. Like, when I was younger, I got an opportunity to be a police officer. Like, they offered me. I would never be a police officer because I would become corrupt. I want keep it 1,000. I would be corrupt.
Yeah.
I would be corrupt and I would become jaded by like seeing all that bad shit, like children getting abused, drug addicts. I would just hate the world.
I know, right?
To understand the gang's roots, we have to go back to the 1950s in California, where the original Mexican Mafia formed within the state's prison system. Within just a few years of its foundation, the gang became known worldwide as an extremely dangerous and deadly criminal organization that controlled much of the legitimate and illegitimate businesses around Los Angeles through this one truth.
Everything started in Cali.
Criminals and gang members will inevitably end up incarcerated. And when they do, they can't have angered those with the power to kill them inside prison walls. While plenty of other prison gangs had formed by the 1950s, the Mexican Mafia's quick rise to power represented a new tier in the history of organized crime, and other groups around the country took note. That brings us to the 1980s, in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, where a man named Heriberto Herbie Huerta decided to form a Mexican Mafia of his own. According to commonly accepted history, Huerta gained permission from the leaders of the California Mexican Mafia, then drafted a constitution for what would become the Texas Mexican
organized, right?
Wow, it's so interesting. We covered a bunch of Cali stories and gangbangers in Cali, the Mexican Mafia in Cali, and that was cool to see the different side of Texas, because I was asking about that. I'm like, how does it work in Texas? We don't really know.
Yeah. And these organizations are extremely organized. Like, they're not just the run-of-the-mill, like, oh, let's just gangbang. like these dudes is structure. Everybody follow the rules, and it's very poetic in a sense. I mean, I know there's a lot of violence, a lot of death, but it's very poetic in the sense that everything flows, everything connects, and for every action there's a reaction, and you have to really respect that these guys could take like hardened criminals and like put them in line, like, yo, this shit gonna be done this way.
We're outlaws, basically.
Mexiconomy. He first attempted to pass off the gang as a religion based around Aztec culture. But when the Texas prison system didn't go for it, that pretense was basically dropped altogether. The Constitution has basically stayed unchanged since the original. One version from 1991 describes the organization as Soldiers of Aztlan, who exist to, quote, advance benefits for our families, our race, and the generations which in the future will represent what we have founded by totally liberating the Mexican nation. It also contains provisions for making money through any means necessary, including narcotics trafficking, murder contracts, robberies, extortion, prostitution, and whatever other commercial enterprise anyone deemed worthwhile by the gang decides to undertake. As you may have already guessed, the Texas Mexican Mafia takes on a paramilitary structure, with officers like generals, captains, and lieutenants, all the way down to prospects and associates.
Wow.
While the people who filled these ranks could be rotated out or even demoted, one thing stayed constant. Huerta was given the role of president for life. and another state prison inmate named Benito Alonso was made lifelong vice president.
He's still
The
locked up.
Constitution bans gambling beyond the value of a pint of ice cream, as well as, quote, heavy teasing between members, and makes it clear that treason will be punishable by death.
Straight up.
In its early years, the Texas Mexican Mafia's main purpose was protection from other groups in prison, most notably the older and larger Texas Syndicate. But it quickly evolved into a criminal organization with power inside and outside of
Chris
prison,
Washburn.
akin to the Mexican Mafia structure in California. Of all of the cities in Texas, the Mexiconomy has the most power in San Antonio, which the gang...
We won't be moving there. We're trying to move to Texas, right? But we're not going to be moving to San Antonio now because they have the most power there. Oh my God.
What's the safest city to live? We're moving to Texas next year, so.
Yeah, let us know.
gang claims as its capital and divides into 4 corners for the north, south, east, and west sides of town, each led by a general who then reports up the chain, with a main general controlling the entire city, who keeps in touch with Huerta and or Alonso.
This doesn't blow your mind. This is modern day shit. This is not 1990s, 1980s. We're talking about modern day people doing crimes and having leaders and generals.
And dudes be leading from the inside.
This is probably the scariest time to do crimes. There's cameras everywhere. Like, how do you even do a crime nowadays?
Well, what we learned is that the way it works is like these guys might be locked up and you can't... Every criminal gonna end up in jail.
Anyway, yeah, that's what they're saying.
And then that's when they get your ass if you don't follow the rules.
Within city limits, the gang has such enormous control that it decreed San Antonio drug dealers must pay an extortion tax of 10%, or $100 per ounce, which is commonly known as the dime. If you're a drug dealer who does not want to pay the dime, the Texas Mexican Mafia is very reasonable. They'll give you one more chance by sending people to your house to hold you at gunpoint, ransack the place for valuables, and possibly assault you, rather than just moving straight to murder.
Oh, shit.
By the 1990s, Huerta had been convicted of racketeering and sent to ADX Florence, a prison known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies that has a reputation for being the most high-security penitentiary in the continental United States.
Colorado. Rockies.
There, he became known as one of just a handful of gangsters nationwide who holds the power to control the streets from a tiny, secluded cell. In the same vein as figures like Larry Hoover, Barry Mills, or Pistol Pete Rollick. In 1994, the same year Huerta was sentenced, a power struggle began within the Mexican Mafia, resulting in the murders of Jose Treviso and James Rivas in April of that year. A Texas Mexican Mafia general named Robert Beaver Perez was convicted and sentenced to death 5 years later of shooting both victims, under the theory that he was searching for Luis Blue Adames, a man who was challenging Huerta for control of the gang, but ended up in a shootout.
I never understood the death part. I think you should be sentenced to death if you do like some crazy, like unnecessary crime. But I think that the person who's doing these crimes, they should suffer and live out those years in jail, right?
That's a valid point. I guess. I mean, but that person you have to pay for that person to be in jail.
But I thought it's a business. You say that every video, Pops. It's a business, right? So
it's a tough topic, but I'm more into execution now.
With Adames' supporters. Adames was killed 7 months later, allegedly on Perez's orders. 3 years after that, in 1997, Texas Mexican Mafia members committed one of the most brutal crimes in San Antonio's history, murdering 5 people during an extortion attempt in what came to be known as the French Place Massacre.
Oh, they got life.
Perez was also convicted in federal court of orchestrating those murders, and prosecutors say they believe he ordered 12 to 18 killings around the same time.
Oh my God.
That case was largely corroborated by the Mexiconomy hitman named Frank Estrada, who admitted to committing no less than 7 murders for the gang.
He was 22.
Yet was granted transactional immunity to testify on behalf of the prosecution.
Oh, wow.
This would be far from the only time the Fed showed their willingness to make deals with admitted murderers in order to prosecute the Texas Mexican Mafia. As for Perez, he was executed in 2007.
Oh, wow.
For the sake of convenience, the Texas Mexican Mafia's middle management is split between prison and the streets. According to the testimony of gang dropouts, members who reach a certain rank in prison and are released are immediately stripped of that rank and must prove themselves to the presiding general or high-ranking officer in order to be accepted in the outside world.
Oh, wow.
The inverse of this is true,
Yeah,
too.
that's pretty interesting, right?
Yeah, that sucks. Because you probably put in mad work in jail. You do like a lot of shit for the organization. And then when you come out, you're like, they strip you of all of that.
Put in work outside.
Put in work outside.
After you already probably put out work outside, going to jail, then you make it to jail, you have to put in pain there, and you come out. And...
So I guess probably guys are coming out like high ranked and shit, and they were maybe out of control when they got to the street.
Those who go to prison must climb the ladder behind bars, regardless of their rank on the outside. The benefits of this are an extra layer of security to vet members, while keeping the centralized leadership of Huerta and Alonso in place. In keeping with this theme of separate yet connected, a common symbol of the Mexiconomy is a two-headed serpent, whose body squirms to form the shape of the letter M. But no amount of vetting can be 100% foolproof, and that's where Julian Pacina enters this story. If nothing else, Officer Pacina was a man of internal conflicts. He sought out a law enforcement career, working as a jail guard at a GEO detention facility before joining Balcones Heights Police in 2009. Yet he was clearly fascinated by life within organized crime. Those who knew him would later testify that he had close family members that were associated with the Mexiconomy. And outside the uniform, Pacina looked more like a Mexiconomy member than a cop. He was covered in tattoos with implicit or even straightforward references to the gang, any of which should have raised serious red flags to any law enforcement officer who saw them. On his Facebook page, he was friends with both officers and gang-affiliated people. But that was far from the worst of it. It turned out that Officer Julian Pacina didn't just earn a living by patrolling the streets and tattooing. He was a drug dealer who peddled heroin and meth in the very same community.
That's why I'm like, how did he be able to afford a tattoo shop working on a salary was probably less than $100K a year?
He cleaned his money. He was co-owner too, because I saw that in that document. So
wow, he did.
Yeah, he was co-owner. So, maybe he was washing money. And do you allure being an officer and not getting pulled over and showing your badge and then let you go? Like, you really turn into like low-key Superman.
Right.
Where he was arresting people for similar crimes. But knowing full well he was operating in an area where drug dealers who get too successful draw the ire of the Texas Mexican Mafia, Pacina sought protection in a foolishly cunning way.
Oh, God.
In early 2014, Pacina checked in with a Northside San Antonio Mexiconomy member named George Munchies Castillo, explaining that he'd been made a member of the gang long ago, but had been out of the loop for the past 6 years. In an even riskier move, he admitted to owing thousands of dollars for failing to pay the dime during this time, explaining that a previous Mexiconomy lieutenant named Johnny Smiley Solis, a man who had recently vanished and was presumed murdered, had charged him so much he couldn't keep up. He claimed that he joined the gang while incarcerated, using his former experience as a jail guard to drop names of imprisoned Texas Mexican Mafia members as proof that he had been in the mix. The gang temporarily took him at his word, but deliberately kept him out of the loop while they worked to verify his claims. Amazingly, by the second week of February 2014, the Texas Mexican Mafia had determined Pacina was, in fact, a member, and placed his name on rosters that were distributed to Mexiconomy officers in San Antonio. It was a roster that included many names, and was constantly changing as members got promoted and demoted with time. We're not going to meticulously go through each officer, but here are a few key figures to remember. There was Ruben Reyes, the Northside lieutenant who entered that position in January 2014.
But I don't get it. They're trying to sneak in as cops. That's the program's so strong, because I feel like in the black program they'd be like, "Yo, you a cop? We're not fucking with you no more." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you could say it across by race. I think that a lot of the gangs, and I know that having an officer in your organization is a great advantage. It's a great advantage. I know of some guys that their cousin was a cop, and they actually shut down operation because their cousin told them
something's about to happen.
They're gonna get raided, and they quit. They walk away from a multi-million-dollar operation.
But I promise you, with police brutality, the black program is not having you be a cop. to get.
I disagree with you.
What do you guys think? The Mexican programs, they're more slick.
You know how dope it is? You a regular civilian, imagine having a cop on your team now. Like if your dad's a cop or if you're a cop.
Yes.
Like, you move different when you got that badge. You know? And you know shit.
After Johnny Solis vanished, under him was the sergeant, Jerry Idrogo, who had proved himself as a worthwhile member by murdering 41-year-old Billy Padilla at his Charbon Drive home months earlier in August of 2013. Idrogo had scoped out the place, followed Padilla into the home, and shot him execution style with a pistol in front of Padilla's elementary school-aged son. Idrogo had been given a time limit to commit the murder and let it lapse, but still gained entry into the gang after its completion. In February 2014, after Pacina had been cleared as a Mexiconomy member, it was Idrogo who started taking Pacina with him to collect dime payments around the north side. Pacina's role would be the muscle. He was essentially a driver and backup security for Idrogo in case someone resisted making their payment. As Idrogo's helper, Pacina was not allowed to have a phone during dime collection. One of the highest-ranking members outside of prison who'd been placed in charge of San Antonio was a man named Raymond Tez, also known as Indio, a longtime member involved in multiple murders who was perfectly willing to call hits, firebomb houses of those who failed to pay the dime, and who raked in hundreds of thousands of dollars in illegitimate income every year. But Tellez had a secret no one in the gang knew. In October 2012, when he was still a lieutenant, he had been pulled over by police and caught with enough drugs to justify a lengthy prison term. Because of this, he brokered a deal with authorities and offered to work for the San Antonio Police Department in order to be allowed to stay on the streets.
Wow.
Tellez's work as an informant produced results, including the arrests of 22 people.
So you gotta play the Snow song. Informa, I do the boom boom yeah. Informa.
He's singing.
Involved in a heroin, methamphetamine, and money laundering conspiracy, all while Tellez remained in good standing with the gang. As a matter of fact, with the full encouragement of police, Tellez was promoted to General of San Antonio for the Texas Mexican Mafia, which seemingly made him the perfect...
He's a general snitch.
Yo!
And I feel like that's how most people get arrested, right? Because there's either a plant, a snitch, or informant. And there's a mole in there that gets you arrested.
Snitch brings down an organization.
Especially with drugs, right? With DA
Overall, people get caught, and they be indirect. Like, this guy is different because he was like in it.
He could have got murdered.
Sometimes people from the outside didn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
You know?
He could have got really hurt, like, if they found out. They probably did eventually, but we'll see.
Perfect police informant. There was just one small catch. Raymond Tez was still operating as a full-fledged gang member.
Wow,
he was still selling drugs and carrying guns as a felon, which authorities may have been able to wrap their heads around for a while. But he was also still murdering people.
Wow.
After the jig was up and he was busted for drugs and firearm possession in May 2013, Tellez admitted to participating in 2 murders that occurred after he'd become an informant. Both committed while police were encouraging him to rise the ranks of a gang where killings were the best means of upward mobility. As for Julian Pacina, he was not a double agent like Perez, nor was he operating some kind of deep cover mission for either the Mexican Texas Mafia or law enforcement. He was a man who lived and worked as an officer, but went out of his way to become a henchman for the strongest and most violent gang in the city where he worked. He was well aware that the risks were enormous. If the FBI found out what he was doing, he would go to prison for years. If the Texas Mexican Mafia found out, they would try to kill him. And as it turned out,
How did he hide the identity that he was a cop?
I don't think he hid the identity that he was a cop.
He just said that if they would have found out, then he would have been...
I think they would have found out he's selling drugs and not paying a dime.
Oh, okay.
Pay attention, man.
Found out, they would try to kill him. And as it turned out, by April 2014, both the FBI and the Texas Mexican Mafia had discovered Pacina's secret. And while neither group knew it at the time, they were in a race to see who would deal with him first, while Pacina's life hung in the balance.
Jesus.
For the FBI, it all started in September 2013, when a suspected heroin dealer was arrested. His phone was seized, and was eventually turned into a confidential informant. Among his phone contacts was a Julian, who had been texting the informant about drug transactions in a not-so-subtle language.
Yeah, we do. Go check out all our videos, first of all. Subscribe to the channel if you've made it this far into the video. Subscribe, because we cover a lot of stuff. We're in Texas right now. We cover a lot of Cali stuff. We cover New York stuff. We even cover gangsters in England over there. But it's the same shit over and over with the texting. Stop texting. Stop with the cell phone. Stop being lazy. Drive across town and talk to the person.
In person, yeah.
In
Outside,
person,
in a park.
with the music blasting and you whispering in their ear, bro. Stop this shit.
As well as texts.
Criminals aren't the smartest.
And Mafia members. By December of that year, FBI Special Agent Marty Martinez was convinced that the Julian in the informant's phone was Julian Pacina, and he was determined to root him out. They arranged for their informant to buy methamphetamine from Pacina, but an unexpected quirk arrived. Pacina was paranoid and somewhat more meticulous than his tendency to flaunt his own gang tattoos on Facebook would suggest. He refused to do hand-to-hand transactions, and instead fronted meth to the CI by leaving it in a flower pot for the informant to pick up. So while the FBI had basically proved he was a meth dealer at this point, before he could be prosecuted for meth distribution, Pacina needed to pay the informant and complete the deal. That was supposed to happen sometime in the first week of May 2014, right around the same time Pacina was killed.
Oh.
But
so he was either going to go to jail or die, basically. That was his story.
That's the story of a man named Brady.
That's crazy how, like, if you want to become a gangster and street dude, this is what happens to you. Like, it's either jail or you dead.
It's pretty interesting, too, because, yo, like, we do videos about a lot of criminals and stuff like that, but this is the first time where this guy was being like, chased by the FBI
and the gang.
And the gangsters. I just wonder how much he knew. Like, I don't really know if anyone knows of another story, like, because he was smart. Like, he's a police officer, so now he's moving at a different vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I bet you, like, even the Julian and the phone, the number he was using was like another, like phone. A burnout phone.
It had to be.
You know what I mean?
Despite all this evidence, the fact that Pacina's arrest was imminent, and the possibility Pacina was committing violence for a gang that cultivates killers, the FBI notably decided against telling the Balcones Heights Police Department about Pacina. Not even the chief of police was kept in the loop. Authorities would later attempt to downplay this omission. But when the Texas Department of Public Safety agent Brian Vajos was asked under oath if they deliberately kept the Balcones Heights police out of the loop because they weren't sure how deep the corruption ran, he said, "That's possible."
Wow. They had to.
In April 2014, agents placed the secret camera outside Notorious Inc. Within days, known Mexicanami heavy hitters were seen visiting the tattoo shop, including Ruben Reyes, who was fast earning a reputation as a killer with no scruples, as well as Jerry Idrogo, who received a Mexicanami tattoo at the shop from Pacina himself.
Oh.
But if this meant that Pacina and Idrogo were becoming fast friends, that was about to change quickly. It all started one day when they were doing their dime collections at the house of a drug dealer named Vic, who went by Vicky. Pacina seemed nervous the second they got there, and after a few minutes in the house, he abruptly got up and headed for his car, leaving Idrogo inside the house with Vicky, in a clear breach of protocol for dime collections. Vicky then confronted Idrogo, demanding to know why he had brought a police officer to his house. Idrogo was not amused. Quote, "Look what you're implying, that guy's a carnal, right? And he's my carnal. If I find out you're lying to me, I'm going to kill you," Idrogo told him, but Vicky didn't falter. He woke up his boyfriend, who independently knew of an officer named Julian Pacina, then went online and showed...
He woke up his boyfriend?
That threw me for a loop.
I know, what the fuck? He's a gang guy? He's a drug dealer? He woke up his boyfriend.
He woke up his boyfriend. You could have left that out.
What?
who independently knew of an officer named Julian Pacina, then went online and showed Idrogo pictures of Pacina in a police uniform. Then he picked up the phone, called a Balcones Heights dispatcher, and asked to speak to Julian Pacina.
Oh, shit.
The dispatcher said Pacina wasn't in there yet, but would be soon. Stunned, but with no other way to get back home, Idrogo returned to Pacina's vehicle outside and was surprised to see Pacina on the phone, once again violating protocol for dining.
So you were right. He was hiding his identity as a police officer.
I told you, Holmes.
You were right. I was wrong.
Thanks for giving me my credit.
and collections.
He's
As soon as he
panicking
could, Idrogo told his lieutenant, Ruben Reyes, what he'd learned. Reyes thought about it for a couple days, then returned with his decision.
Oh, shit.
Quote, "He's gotta go."
He gotta go.
Idrogo's plan was to lure Pacina to a place where he could be killed with no witnesses and to be buried in a remote part of the
He ain't going,
woods,
man.
which the gang had done countless
He would
times
never
before.
go.
Yeah.
But Pacina had sensed danger, and he didn't give them an opportunity. Frustrated and impatient, Reyes then gave Idrogo an ultimatum to just get it done.
And the thing is, it's hard because you have to go to that 2-2 shop. You own it. So if they know where you are, you can't trust people. You know what I'm saying? It's just crazy. But how do you hide your identity as a cop?
That shit is That shit is like that drug dealer life and like criminal life. That shit is a lot of backstabbing and crossing, and it always be the people that are close to you, bro.
Yeah.
Because they know how vulnerable you are.
Idrogo wasn't about to murder Pacina on his own, but was allowed to take his pick of hitmen. He settled on Alfredo Freddy Lo Cardona,
Freddie
a
Lowe.
Texas-Mexican Mafia prospect who just needed to commit a murder to join the gang. And Jesse Santibanez, a member of the gang who had been recently demoted for a screw-up and needed a way of rising into the ranks again. On the night of the murder, a lot of stuff went wrong. A fifth co-conspirator who was supposed to steal a car for them completely failed. It would have been smarter to postpone things, but Idrogo was feeling the pressure from Reyes, and he decided to go ahead with it. They used Cardona's Sunfire, but switched the paper plates out with those from the car of Santibanez.
Pretty smart. At least they switched the plates, bare minimum.
Motherfucker had a Pontiac Sunfire.
Yeah, you could find that car easily.
Hell, I'm about to say the opposite. That shit is like.
No, I'm saying like you would spot it easily.
Oh, okay,
Right?
okay,
Like-
yeah. But a Pontiac Sunfire, a white Pontiac, like they'll just run the plate. They'll run like in the city who has a white. That's not like you should have did a Honda Accord.
Yeah.
Cardona grabbed a 9mm pistol, while Santibanez wielded a shotgun. Idrogo drove
Shotguns.
and dropped them off around the corner from Notorious Inc., then instructed them simply to shoot Pacina when he exited the shop and to hop into the vehicle. It didn't quite go so smoothly. Idrogo pulled up and texted Pacina as planned, but the gunmen were nowhere in sight. As he approached the car,
Where'd they go?
Pacina, armed with a pistol, sensed something was wrong and began to question Idrogo with an ire of suspicion. Idrogo told Pacina he was tired and just wanted to collect Pacina's dime payment and go home, all while wondering where the hell Cardona and Santibanez were. After a few moments, Idrogo took his foot slightly off the brake of the Sunfire, and when the brake light flickered, the gunman came bursting out, firing multiple rounds at Pacina. He was struck 3 times, any one of which could have been fatal on its own. Afterwards, they gave the guns to Reyes for destruction and were told to lay low. Idrogo, concerned by both the prospect of being arrested and of being murdered as the gang tried to cover its tracks, fled to a relative's in Ohio.
Oh shit.
But the FBI poll camera had already given authorities the evidence they needed to track down Cardona as a suspect. He was the first of 3 to be arrested. Idrogo's turn came when authorities raided his mother's house in San Antonio, and he got on the phone with a detective and promised to turn himself in. He was extradited from Ohio to Texas,
Sick.
and it decided his time as a gang member was over. He made a deal with federal prosecutors, admitting to both Billy Padilla and Julian Pacina's murders, and agreed to testify against Santibanez and Cardona.
Wow.
On the stand at their trial in 2017, he said that Padilla's murder still haunts him. Raymond Tez also offered up his testimony as a part of a deal where he admitted murdering 4 people, 2 of whom were killed after he became a government informant. One of them, Jose Figueroa, was strangled with an Xbox cord and stabbed to death at a gang meeting with dozens of members present.
An Xbox cord is crazy.
It's insane to me, like, your lifestyle, like, you go like a gang meeting and motherfucker get killed at the gang meeting, bro.
Word.
Like, these guys are no joke, bro.
Word.
This is
shit.
not a joke, bro.
Word. Modern day shit,
Stay
too.
in school. Don't be no fool.
The three others, Jose Bravo, Adam Trevino, and Vincent Chacon, were fatally shot for owing money to generals or falling behind on dime payments.
So how many years they got?
There was just one more piece to the puzzle missing. Ruben Reyes. On November 9th,
They all ratted on him, it
2014,
looks
four
like.
Texas Mexican Mafia hitmen knocked on Reyes' door and opened fire when he answered it. He was hit only once, but required hospitalization. 5 days later, after accepting he was now a target for murder by the gang, he offered himself up as a government cooperator and dropped perhaps the biggest bombshell yet.
What?
He led them to a remote location in Pearsall, Texas, on Armadillo Road, and told the feds to dig. On November 19th, 2014, exactly where Reyes said they would be, authorities uncovered 3 bodies.
Yo!
Amazingly, Reyes revealed that he had killed all 3 men on the same day and dumped them there all at the same time. One of them was Johnny Smiley Solis, the man Reyes replaced as the Northside lieutenant, and the man whose death Pacina had used to his advantage in order to gain footing in the Texas Mexican Mafia.
God. It's funny
Reyes
because
said
he
that-
ratted and all that, but he's still gonna get life for killing 3 people. Isn't that
Unless he cut a deal. We must have cut
what?
a deal. Let's see.
It's crazy.
That in December 2013, he'd been ordered to kill Smiley, as well as Texas Mexican Mafia General Carlos Worm Chapa and Captain Mark Anthony Bernal, aka Lefty, for mishandling $60,000 in Mexiconomy funds and for other questionable leadership decisions.
Wow.
In fact, the Texas Department of Public Safety had learned Bernal's life might be at risk and attempted to warn him, but he apparently brushed them off. Reyes would later plead guilty to the 3 murders plus Pacina's and be sentenced to multiple life sentences.
Oh, wow.
In 2017, Santibáñez
So
and
he was like,
Cardona-
you know what? I'm gonna just rap because at least.
If I'm going down, the whole ship is going down.
Wow. People be ratting,
Motherfucker
bro.
got 5 life terms, bro.
That's a lot of rats out there. Like, there's so many rats, bro.
Yeah, I mean, yo, listen, man.
People not trying to do time.
People not trying to do time. He tried to negotiate a way out. And unfortunately for him, he was not able to.
What?
And he got to pay for what he did.
Why would he admit? You think he admitted because they were gonna find out?
They probably jerked him on a plea deal. He probably thought he was going to get a plea deal, and then they reneged on that shit and pulled back. I mean, he's wiggling trying to wiggle his way out of shit. You can't blame him, bro.
Were convicted by a Texas jury that deliberated for just a couple hours before returning guilty verdicts on racketeering and murder charges. On August 15th, 2018, the day he was sentenced to multiple life terms, Santibáñez rose in court to thank his family for their unconditional love by attending the trial and staying in touch with him during his incarceration. He then said, quote, "I would also like to express and let it be known that I am innocent of these charges and that the government and prosecutors have punished me for exercising my constitutional right to a trial by impeding my every step with a superseding indictment, mandatory life enhancement, and false testimony of government witnesses, who at trial were the self-proclaimed authors of this crime." On that last point, it's hard to argue with Santibáñez. While Reyes did receive a life term, Tez and Idrogo both received 20-year prison terms, despite admitting participation in multiple murders each.
Wow.
For Tez, though, testifying against the Texas Mexican Mafia nearly became a death sentence.
Yeah.
While incarcerated at a GEO facility awaiting trial, he was stabbed by 2 gang members who had learned that he was a cooperator.
Wow.
Tez survived the attack, sued the facility for failing to protect him, and is currently scheduled to be released from federal prison in 2029.
Oh.
Bef-
That's like.
That must be hard, though, because you snitch against them, and then, like, you're like a target, bro.
Yeah.
So they probably got to have him in PC.
But how did he still get 20 years if he? Oh, because he was still killing people
Yeah.
when he was out trying to. Grow the
A
ranks.
lot of dudes negotiate really good and get no time.
That's crazy.
He didn't get that.
Before Santibáñez was sentenced, U.S. District Judge Xavier Rodriguez made one last symbolic gesture. While he still sentenced Santibáñez to life, Rodriguez refused to impose a federal law designed to punish people who assault or kill police officers during the performance of their lawful duties. Quote, "In this case, Pacina was a bad cop," Rodriguez said.
Oh, wow.
He wasn't retaliated against because he was a police officer. He was being retaliated against because he failed to tell the Mafia he was a police officer, and so they couldn't trust him anymore.
How you go
Thanks
to
for
that
listening.
world? How do you
How
you enter that world? Like how you a cop and try to hide this shit?
You have a good job.
Yeah, that
Why
shit
would
is
you do
crazy, man.
Yo, I want to know how many people are locked up currently who are serving life. Let us know in the comments. Is there any TV or something?
We out of here.
Peace.
And I know how it gets, so I gotta stay low, not move my knot. I don't trust no nigga, I don't trust no man, ain't no friends, everybody get shot. You never know how nigga gon' throw, I'm hitting the floor with a couple of shots. You better move, you better duck, either way to go.